Welcome to the Stay at Work Home. We are here to question the prevailing assumptions about the meaning of life, work, and the purpose of people. Instead of being torn apart by our vocations, we want to be pulled together. Come along with us as we change our picture of the good life and pursue the home as God intended, one that worships through work together. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Stay at Work Home. I'm Keith. This is my wife.
I'm Becky.
And today we are going to talk about DIY entertainment, producing your own entertainment. We haven't talked a lot about entertainment. We've kind of talked about not being entertained, not doing just recreational stuff all the time as a family, but having family time that is based around work, since most of your life is work, taking that back to the family. But today we want to talk about entertainment because we do participate in entertainment. In fact, everybody participates in entertainment. In one of our episodes, we talked about how even the Amish like to have a good time. And we like to have a good time. Of course, we like to have a good time with work, but there's time after work for other things. The sun goes down and you're still not asleep sometimes. And so we've got a list of things we want to talk about as far as that goes. And of course, one of those things that's always big for us is reading aloud as a family so that you all have kind of a similar or same set of cultural touchstones, sayings, inside jokes to build a family culture around. And so we have a read aloud book list for your family that will also inspire your kids to like to work together and stuff. So that'll be in the show notes. Cool. So what do we have?
What do we have? Well, you always have bad dad jokes.
I do have bad dad jokes. So you can tell bad dad jokes. You can get an expired dad joke calendar for really cheap. Like get last year's in January or February, very, very cheap.
Yeah. You could save it for 2 or 3 years to give it away to somebody's birthday.
That's right.
When you've forgotten or haven't had time.
The dates may be irrelevant, but the bad dad jokes are never irrelevant.
They're never more irrelevant.
Never more irrelevant to start with. That's right.
So I think about when our DIY entertainment, I think about this time that you made me go on a horseback ride. And there were only 5, I think. Then it was between William and Mercy, which is a very short window between William and Mercy. So I might have even been pregnant but not known it. Anyway, so we went out on a horseback ride. It was pretty early in the morning.
Becky no longer rides horses, by the way. She's been on like 3 and 2 of them.
I've been more than 3.
Maybe 5, but like the last 2 were bad, so it ended.
Not bad, but bad. I don't want
not
to.
Good.
So
she doesn't want to.
I'm entertained by my children going on horseback rides. So I'll stay home and make dinner while they go ride around the house and stuff.
Cool.
But
we got back
this particular
on
occasion,
our romantic little horseback ride.
And Annika must have only been 9 or 10. And that would make Gracie, 7 or 6 or something like that. And we had been gone a whopping, I don't know, hour maybe. Yeah. And while we were gone, though, they firstly they made breakfast. They made French toast. It was okay, culinarily wise. But
it was breakfast for dinner, or was it breakfast?
No, it was breakfast.
It was breakfast. Okay.
There was a reason we had to do it early in the morning. Had to do the ride early in the morning. Maybe it was summer. I don't. Timing doesn't make sense. But anyhow. And we came in, and while we were coming back to the house, we saw the kids actually gathering. Martin, I think, who would have only been 2 or 3, was gathering flowers, and it wasn't a normal flowery time of day, or time of year. And so he was gathering flowers in the backyard, and once he saw us, he scurried inside really fast. And we got home, and we went through the front door, which was unusual. I think they made us go to the front door. Yeah. And as we came in, they took a rug of some sort, or maybe it was a sheet, and rolled out a sheet so that we could walk on a sheet to the living room where they had set up a little station for us as king and queen to sit and eat our breakfast in the living room. And then they proceeded to do a play, which happened to be Macbeth. Now, we had talked about Shakespeare, and I think at that point in our homeschooling, we had maybe read parts of A Midsummer Night's Dream. So we'd been exposed to Shakespeare, but they had a little copy of, I don't know, a kid's version of Macbeth, which is kind of a strange one to have
Dark.
A kid's version of. But Gracie, they had been reading it on their own. I didn't even know they had been reading it. Annika had been reading it aloud to Gracie, and she they then memorized a handful of lines, and Gracie dressed up as one of the witches, and she had the little witches cantations, we call them,
Where have
memorized.
you been, sister? Killing swine.
And
I
they
just, yeah, Gracie came in with that killing
it
swine and
was
this great little witch voice.
it was great.
They
And
did a scene or two,
they did,
right? The
yeah.
opening
I mean,
thing,
it really
basically.
was very little, but
It
the
was so
entire
good.
experience was like flat. I don't know if I'd had a bad day the day before or whatever, but I think that was the moment I was like, okay, we're doing all right.
It's gonna be okay.
It's going to be okay.
The kids will be okay. The kids are all right.
They're all right. And they were having fun performing this play that I didn't know that they were even practicing. And they did it just for us. Like that's the only purpose, was that they wanted to do it for us. Like that was their point.
Have we ever done, and this is the first sort of item on our list that we wrote down here, have we ever done a family dining in at that point? Or is that not an idea yet?
I'm sure it was an idea. I feel like we did it one time in Mapleton. So I think,
okay, yeah,
I think once.
Yeah.
And even maybe not where we discussed it. I don't feel like it was until we were in this house where we talked about it as like a thing. But I for your birthday often, that would be usually when we would do it. And maybe we've done it once or twice on Valentine's Day, but I don't know that we'd really hashed it out till we lived here. But what do you mean by a dining in?
So a dining in is a military tradition that dates back to Vikings who, they went out and did their Viking things. When they came back from raping and pillaging, they had a feast.
Mm-hmm.
And according to stuff I read on the internet, because I had to fill in the gaps here, then monks started having dining ins, and that makes sense because Vikings and monks, basically the same thing.
Slightly different. Yeah,
slightly different, but like, what else are you doing as a monk? Why not have a party at night? But no, it's a formal dinner, and it's also it's a dining in, not a dining out. There's a dining out that involves other people being invited in the military to a dining out. It's still a formal occasion, but it's not just the internal members of that particular military unit. A dining in is just those. So it gets a little crazier. Now, our family dining ins are not crazy, but they are formal. So you have to get dressed up. Everybody's in charge of something, helping put it together, because we don't have a butler and a staff of people. We're not hiring this out. We're doing it ourselves. But yeah, it's a formal thing. You dress up. It's formalized, and that's something that's very much missing in our society. There's an interesting video of, or like several videos of just like a camera sitting in downtown New York City, I think it was, downtown, whatever you call it, New York City in Manhattan, and just watching people go by. And the two things you notice is that everybody's dressed really nicely, and everybody's grabbing or already carrying and reading as they walk a newspaper. So that was the smartphone of the day. But nobody hardly, unless for professional purposes, whatever, dresses up anymore. And why would you? Because within our modern philosophy, it doesn't matter. But to formalize something or to solemnize something says something about what you think in terms of just the meaning of your actions and history and the universe and your existence. And people want to do it once they've tried it, right? Especially kids. Mm-hmm. Kids want to do it. So it's fun. It solemnizes it. It elevates the meaning of the family in the minds of your children. So it's good to do. It's fun. Have good food. Make it tasty. Make it fancy.
Make it different than something you would do otherwise.
Different.
And, we're not, it's ironic for you to be talking about formal as though we are formal people.
We're
because
not.
As a rule, this is a sharp contrast to our norm. It's like, I'm going to serve the food onto the plate from the stove kind of mama. And we have never really passed at the table. He probably wants
good food, though.
What?
You make good food.
In general?
And then now even if I make food, I'm going to try to make it really good. Because
right. We do like good food. But the dining ins, like, we'll lay out the tablecloth, we'll lay out the place setting a little bit more so. We're not teaching formal etiquette or something like that. And maybe we should. It might come along. And the kids are learning that a little bit with their schooling, with their protocol and things like that. So it's there. But it does, it's nobody minds doing it. I guess because we've done it young enough, I don't know that we'll ever get resistance to us doing that, because we're kind of making them feel special too.
Yeah.
They might see us dress up a little bit nicer to go out on a date or something, and this is kind of a family date, is what it kind of
Yep.
becomes. And it's been, we haven't done it enough, but when we have done it, it's been a fun thing.
It's been good. Well, man, we already got drama because you already said that thing. Except, can we say any more about drama? Let's say about drama. So, like, the story about the kids throwing together this thing totally off the cuff and surprising us was great. And that was actually very easy to sit through. Like, it wasn't a drag on us. That's not always the case. Depending on what the schedule is and what the kids are throwing together, they want us to come see their show.
Yes. And William is insistent on making tickets. Like, the show itself is one thing. I think we went out. What did we do?
Tickets.
He planned, it was just after he started playing violin. So keep in mind, if you've ever had a young violinist, when they first start playing violin, it is not necessarily the most pleasant thing to sit through for 2 minutes, much less 10. But he had this built up recital. Huge. And we did it back on the porch. And I guess some of the different, it was sweet though, because the other kids participated. So William's brain baby, and he made little tickets, and he wanted to take your ticket as you went through the door. And then he wanted it to be videoed. He had all these little, he's an interesting character. Just the way he loves events. He does a store. He creates a store, all these, different things. But anyway, it's just he likes to have tickets.
I think it's an inborn desire to build institutions that outlast you.
He is more like you than anybody else in this family. So there might be that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So sometimes they're not always the most pleasant of sounds, but since they're your own children, and you can kind of usually put up with it.
So point being, do put up with it. Yeah. Do suffer through it, because the fruit of it is really good. Mm-hmm. Okay. Next, fires. Light stuff on fire. Fires of all sizes.
Oh dear. Yeah.
Okay, so recently,
we should put some caveats, like, please don't light.
Don't have unsafe fires,
right? Which we have done.
It's
poorly.
Recently, we had a fire just in the last, what was it, Friday or Saturday night?
Oh, yeah,
not long ago, 2 or 3 nights ago. We had a fire. It was a brush pile, or just trees, limbs, stuff that we've been piling up for a while, because we have land and the stuff's always falling over, and you have to chop it up and put it in the pile and burn it. We hadn't burned it in a while, so we did that because the conditions were right, and no one was harmed. It did not get out of control, and everything was great. That was awesome. This time.
No one's been really harmed otherwise.
Was it early? Must have been like June. My parents were here. We were having dinner, and Gracie, 13-year-old, said, "Hey, can we go start a fire?" And they start fires all the time. Little fires to like cook a little fish on, or cook, or do marshmallow s'mores, or just to have a fire. And I'm like, yeah, cool. 15 minutes later, maybe 15 minutes later, I turn to the side, and it looks like Apocalypse Now just happened. Like napalm has been dropped.
She took out a brush pile for us. Mm-hmm.
There was a brush pile. We happened to be in a drought, maybe not a drought. We weren't thinking of it as a drought yet, actually, but it was getting there. And I would not have thought that it was going to go that crazy, but she did not build a small fire off to the side. So be specific and maybe discuss safety with your kids. So we all ran outside, and this one was like started in a hedgerow. I don't remember what we did. I jumped on the tractor basically, and we cleared some stuff to stop it from spreading, and it stopped spreading pretty
quick.
Yeah. Everybody started bringing water and tossing it around there, and so it got under control. But it started really huge. It was like 30 feet tall.
So that's the caveat too. Fires are fun, and they really are a great source of entertainment. I kind of was resistant even this week, because it's just the effort sometimes that goes into getting it going, especially a big one that we're trying to take care of and take out.
And this one didn't get going easily. It took a few minutes to get it going.
I think it might still be smoldering.
It's still smoldering,
which is great, because it's
putting more stuff on it,
because it's burning down things that really need to burn. And it's in a very confined space.
But there's something about fire. There's something about sitting around a fire, because, and this is deep and philosophical, it's always changing and always the same.
Wendell Berry talks about that.
Water's the same way. You can sit and watch a
No.
creek flow.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Water and fire. That
Water and
we are
fire, they're liquid.
attracted
We're
to
attracted
them.
to. People have been sitting around fires for a long time for a reason. They're warm and they're pretty and they're enjoyable. In the wintertime, we use a wood stove in our basement, and it's got glass on it so you can watch the fire. And if I'm not insistent, if I don't, you have some discipline. I will, once I get the fire going, I'll just sit there. I could sit and watch the fire for a long, long time, even though I shouldn't. It's warm, and I don't like cold. So yeah, fires are great. Have fires. Maple syrup is another time we had to have a fire. Sometimes that's a community fire over at Mountain Man Preacher Kinney's because he's got a big evaporator and we don't. But we've done it over here too.
That's back to work, though.
Yeah, it is. But it's like together, and that's almost like a festival, right?
Yeah.
It's great. Making maple syrup is something that you should do. If you have maple trees and it gets below freezing, particularly if it gets below like 25, you can make maple syrup. Even if you're in like North Alabama or something, you could probably still do it.
It's a lot of effort, but it's such a neat process to see from start to finish.
Kids love it.
They do.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay. So, writing stuff, writing books, writing music, writing poetry. Our first child just naturally loved that. Of course, she was read to, and then she wanted to write her own things. It oozes out of her. And then the other ones have more or less taken that on at times.
Yeah. I can't think. All of them want to write things and to or to make up songs.
Yes.
So
not all of them want the things that they have written read out loud in front of their family.
It's usually the things that are worth reading aloud that they're more sensitive to. Yeah. And the things that are, again, indulge them and let them read the thing aloud. Or William loves, again, that's another, William likes he likes a formalized thing. He likes something that feels important. And he is very entertained by writing a book or drawing pictures on a page and getting somebody else to spell things for him or to write it down for him. And then to show the whole world his thing.
Gotta show everybody.
Folded up pieces of paper with scratched out letters.
So that brings us to poetry tea time, which is kind of like a dining in, except it's shorter.
It's more frequent. It's more frequent. And this it's part of I would say it's part of our school rhythm. It's not per se, we don't have it currently in a like weekly format or anything like that, but it is a known thing. Like the kids know what I mean when I say poetry tea time, and I do not have to fight to get a 16-year-old there, and I don't have to fight certainly to get a 6-year-old there. And it, there's a lot of talk about the value of poetry and a lot of the homeschooling philosophies of the day.
Let's talk about that for a sec.
Okay.
Oh, but tell me what Charlotte Mason says.
Well, it's just, just know in the Charlotte Mason or classical circles, like it's very common for us now in morning time, things like that, to bring out poetry. And IEW's poetry memorization book. If I start saying ooey gooey, I think
was a worm.
A mighty worm was he.
He climbed up in the sycamore tree for the Lord. No, that's a different
wrong poem. Anyway, ooey gooey is a favorite poem. And what's interesting is
there was a train involved. It was very gruesome.
Yeah, we started poetry tea time before we were memorizing poetry, and I did not like poetry as a child, like almost at all. Nursery rhymes, you kind of put up with them, but then you get to a point where you're too old for them.
It was never taken beyond that.
Yes,
me,
right. Well, maybe by middle school or high school where you were required to recite.
But there was a gap at that point, and like you lost the desire or the understanding.
And the willingness to sort through difficult meanings, because poetry it's not forward with its meaning, right? Poetry often is.
And yet it's pregnant with meaning.
It is more so than most prose. And so you have to dig for it. You have to, it's like sunflower seeds or pistachios or something, or even cracking a walnut, like a
food you work for.
You have to work for it, but it's very satisfying once you kind of glean some meaning. So
it makes you slow down too. The thing about poetry in terms of a practical application of poetry, and this was something that came up in a student/family interview for a challenge class, was the girl was like, I don't like poetry, it's dumb. And I'm like, well, what do you want to do? And she's like, I want to be a reporter. I want to be a journalist. And I was like, well, what's the most difficult thing about being a journalist? I don't think she knew, but I was like, okay, let me tell you what the most difficult thing about being a journalist is. You've only got so much word count, particularly if it's newspaper. But even even in digital media, it doesn't matter. You want to get the point across very quickly because you're competing with other news sources. So you want to get a lot of information over in a short amount of space. What is poetry? It's really dense, pregnant with meaning words, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let me back that up. It's words which are very dense and pregnant with meaning, put together in such a way that it very efficiently puts across complex, deep
Mm-hmm.
thoughts, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you get comfortable with poetry, your prose will improve,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you're trying to be very efficient with your words.
And it's layered meaning. There are things you can glean from the surface of poetry, and then the longer you look at it, the longer you consider it, the more you uncover kind of mystery, if you will, underneath it. And it's
Yeah.
like a puzzle then to some degree as well. And it's interesting because I would say Annika doesn't immediately say she loves poetry. Like that's not she does like writing songs, and she likes poetry and song. That's her form that she likes poetry to take. But we were just at a college visit, and we did a poetry. They did some of the professors sat before us and just kind of did a poetry discussion, for lack of a better term. I don't know what they actually called it. I think it's just a poetry discussion, which is basically all you can do if you come together as a group. And you don't have some critical piece of literature telling you exactly what every word means in this poem, which, by the way, is a good thing to have, but it's not usually where you want to start. You want to use your own brain with your own resources and your own senses, your own memoria to like start piecing apart poetry. And so that's what they did. They just kind of modeled that before us. And initially, the poem, I knew she wouldn't have liked it. It didn't rhyme. It had some weird like references that maybe she didn't know, but she sat through that experience, enjoyed it, and then so much so that she then gave it to her class when she went back to CC the next week. And then that next week after that, we had a poetry tea time. It's the last one we had. And I was going to just bring out a couple of things from the books, that we hadn't read yet or that we hadn't read in a while. And we usually recite some of the ones we've memorized just for fun, because it's fun. It's fun to recall the things that grew in meaning to you. But she really wanted to share this other poem with the kids. She didn't want us to go through all of the pieces because she knew they wouldn't quite understand it. But she wanted to read a little bit of it to them as well, so that they could come into it. So it's a type of entertainment. It's a type of art that grows on you the more you experience it. And that was just one example of how. And when you love something, what do you want to do? Is show other people.
Yeah.
So anyway, poetry tea time is not something it does usually involve tea, and that's because our family loves tea. You could make it involve something,
And
anything.
involve coffee, which we also love.
Yes, but coffee's too normal for us, so it doesn't actually work for poetry tea time. And some of our kids drink tea frequently, but this is a pot of tea. We make sure to make a pot of tea. Actually, I think one of the big sufferings we had in the last few years is that my teapot cracked in the handle that we'd used for years.
We've been looking for a decent teapot
and
for a good price. And we haven't found it yet.
We really still haven't found it, but we have a medium-sized one now, so it's working. But simply tea, we often do have some sort of treat. If we baked something, it's usually scones of some sort, just because we don't do scones at other times. So it's kind of a special thing.
But we don't do. Oh, go ahead.
But it could be any kind of sweet treat, or it didn't have to be sweet. It just could be anything. And we sit and I let their mouths be full while I read.
Lightly sweetened.
I read something, and I generally try to read something that's a little bit harder than they would necessarily grow towards themselves. This last one we read that took its toll on us in a fun way was The Pirate Dondurk of Doughty. So if you haven't read The Pirate Dondurk of Doughty, please check it out. It's hilarious. And you will then know a little bit more about Keith and William, because we say that they are now the Pirate Dondurks of Doughty. There's
the Pirates Dondurk of Doughty. That's the way you would say that.
Sorry, the Pirates Dondurk.
I don't know how I feel about this comparison, but
his sins are many. They number 103. The Pirate Dondurk.
He's very good looking. So poetry time, that's done. So art, otherwise,
we don't.
have to encourage it. We're allowing it, and the mess that it makes. I don't know if we're right or wrong exactly on how much of the mess. I mean, we probably just need to make them clean it up better and organize it better. But yeah, sometimes, let's not say sometimes, all the time, art could cover the house.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a fight against the pile of art. But we need to let that be okay
Yeah.
because they're producing something.
And
It's good. It's like every creative and fine motor and bigger motor and all that stuff skills are happening, and it needs to continue.
we do not consider ourselves artists,
No.
right? Like neither of us have particularly good handwriting. Neither of us. I mean, I like needle-ish work, but otherwise, and you can play guitar, but I would have always said I can't draw. But one of
And we
the
do
things,
not dance
and we do not dance
like the tomato. Sobre tomato.
but our children have they learn very basic drawing skills beginning at the age of 4 or younger, which is very simple techniques. And we don't talk about whether they can be artists or not. We just do this.
They assume
we
they
just
can.
practice, and they assume they can. When my older ones were younger, I didn't necessarily let them get out the paints and the stuff, and I would hide the markers from the toddlers. Not enough. We have pictures of multiple toddlers with full sleeves of marker art and backs covered in marker art, which, by the way, you can't do to yourself. So you need a older sibling usually to draw on your back for you. But I did that with older kids. I think most of us that have a spectrum of aged kids maybe withhold some of those fun things at first and then realize eventually it's worth the mess. It really is worth the mess. Yeah. And the art at this point is the paint. Little life hack: if you have not gotten watercolors out for your kids, get watercolors out because they are so easy to clean up. They're not the dauntingness, the scariness of all kinds of paint. Acrylics and things like that are still scary because they can get on stuff and not get cleaned up, or if you're not watching what kind of paint it is. But watercolors actually are so simple, and there's so much you can do with watercolor. And there's YouTube galore that can tell you how to do simple things with watercolor. And so that actually has become, I will let Mercy, unless she has another task. I don't say no to her on watercolor. And at this point with her, we're really seeing the fruits of.
We're like, good grief, she's getting good. She's 6 years old and she's just rocking out.
She really is. And not just in watercolor, but also just drawing. She's become quite the little artist. And not all of them, I would say the boys at large don't care so much for hand arts, but they do at times. I mean, Trace does at times, especially. And Martin likes tinkering with things. So his art might come in building stuff for him, with Legos or tracks to put his cars down. But it really is worth it. It's almost it doesn't take the place of something like copywork, but it's worth the effort and worth the mess to work on those fine motor skills while they're being creative, because it adds this layer of willingness and interest in putting hand to paper or putting hand to work, that makes it so much more fun, and then builds a whole lot of, and that again, I don't have to, that's preaching to the choir on any kind of homeschool philosophy, because most of the things you'll see out there right now have a lot of handicrafts or encourage artwork, encourage different forms, chalk pastels, oil pastels, all these different things that you can use, medium, that help the kids to explore texture and things like that. Stuff I just didn't know. And I'm not an art teacher or an artist per se, but I'm growing to understand them mostly just through playing with them and enjoying that process. And even though there is art everywhere in our house, it is a beautiful decoration. It really is, because once they've learned to, we have enough.
Take their best stuff and actually display it.
Yes. Yeah. And we have so much to choose from that we can actually, and it draws attention. When people come to our house, we have like a string over the fireplace upstairs that has, clothespins on it. And we'll put some of their best stuff of late up there. And it draws attention because it is that good and it's varied, and you can see the different personalities of the kids coming out through their artwork. So anyway, as a non-artsy person, I highly recommend that you let your kids play with art stuff as their form of entertainment. So,
yep. And we said something about writing music earlier, but it kind of went into the books. I would take a guess that every one of our kids has written a song. We just don't know about all of them yet.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
But the first child has written a ton of songs. The second child has written some songs. and they're good.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, like, I don't care what anybody says, because I'm their dad. No, there's a lot of people. A lot of other people think they're pretty good too. But regardless of how good they are, the scale, and this gets to a point I want to make. Local entertainment, when you do go out for entertainment and just like you can do it participating in like corporate consumerism, or you can do it by participating in your local community. Do it by participating in your local community.
Mm-hmm.
Go to the local Shakespeare production or whatever production, whatever kind of, go to the local dirt track and watch cars go in a circle. I mean, that's exciting, and you might get killed. So that makes it, it's the real danger
We haven't done
that makes it really exciting. I want to do that so
I
bad.
know if your sons are listening on the other side of this wall, they're going to keep you accountable to you saying
Should,
that.
should. I want to go. There's one not far away. I want to do it. Televised sports, televised racing has really hurt the local sporting scene. Television has hurt local theater productions and so forth. Go support your local theater productions. And when you go to those local ones, newsflash, it won't be as good. Who cares? Actually, it's a great benefit that it's not as good. Why? Because it's not so daunting to look at it and say, well, I can't act as good as the person that just won an Oscar, right? Mm-hmm. But if you actually go down to the local theater and see some people that are decent, but you know them, it just makes it so much more accessible, and it gives you the confidence, hey, maybe I could do it. Hey, maybe we as a family could participate in this next year. Let's go try out for some parts. And in the meantime, it's going to inspire them, like probably as soon as you get home, though you're telling them to go to bed, they're going to be writing or practicing a play very quietly, trying not to get in trouble for staying up.
We make them do music lessons, at least. Some of them are made, some of them love it, so we don't have to make it happen. But those who maybe they wane on their interest in, especially violin, the best thing we can do to rekindle their interest is to go see an orchestra performance. And
yes,
we just went to one last week, and I mean, it can't be just our town, but there are free performances I imagine all over the place.
Classical music is almost always free. Mm-hmm. Hopefully some rich person has thrown some money into an endowment at some point that is keeping your local symphony orchestra alive.
Or in our case, university orchestra. They love to have.
If you've got a college of any kind, probably about any level, there's probably some kind of either chorus, chorale, whatever you call that, singing stuff, orchestra, pit orchestra, various different kinds of music that you can go see. And it's inspiring because they're seeing it live. It's not on a professional level. People didn't put millions and millions of dollars into making this production. It's something that actually inspires them to be able to do it themselves, which brings up team sports. That's kind of first on a list of stuff that we don't do much. And actually, we're talking about doing a little bit, but generally speaking, we would encourage not the team sports so much, but more like the sandlot stuff where they have to organize it themselves. So they're producing the entire experience versus just being a cog in a machine. You are a good pitcher. You go pitch. You are a good batter. You're going to bat, and we're going to stick you in the outfield or whatever the case is. So sports, don't get crazy with them, and if you can make them more DIY, that's much better. That's kind of what horses have been for us too. Movies, we do not much.
We try to do family movie nights, although it's hard for daddy and mommy to sit down. We need to be more disciplined to actually go watch a movie with them, but we do that very limited.
When we do it, I still don't want to do it. Anyway.
Yes, it's like your favorites.
We don't do TV at all. We don't do video games at all. Now, a couple of more points before we wrap up is that, yes, everyone's interests end up becoming everyone else's interests.
It's kind of a common accusation, but it's this concern in large families often that somebody's going to be forgotten, or they're not going to come to their full potential because they're stuck in this big bulk, right? And that not everybody's given them the right amount of attention to their personality or whatever. And there's certainly a concern about that, but I think an overemphasis on trying to dig up what each individual child is, what their greatest strength is, or this, that, or the other. An overemphasis on that really actually fragments your family back out.
Mhm.
And it doesn't mean that you're unique children. I mean, our kids are incredibly unique. Like every single one of them has such, I mean, mind-blowing different personalities and interests. But as one finds an interest, because we've, it's not even it's not a struggle for us to keep them unified on something. When somebody's interested in something, they're excited about it. And because we're together so much, when they are excited about it, everybody swarms to them and wants to hear why they're excited about it. And even if at first they're like, oh, I don't like that, they're still leaning in, and then they might dabble and play. So like the art thing, Annika enjoyed art from a young age, and that trickled down just a little bit. And then Gracie like kind of took off and ran with it. And I mean, she really is. Everybody agrees that she has been our primary artist per se. But then little one watching those girls and say, oh, my sisters love art. Everybody kind of, you catch the crumbs off the table. So in some way, yes, Annika's interests maybe have led everyone's, but not entirely, because there are things that the younger kids, Trace is obsessed with chickens. Everybody loves chicken. Everybody loves chickens now, right? Maybe
Yeah.
not Annika, but they really do kind of, they
They
come
share
to.
interests. They come to share
Mhm.
interests. And so, yes, like the little girl who, 6 years old, and shows a lot of potential to be a great artist, and will just spend her
She
days
spent all day
spend all days
painting.
making art and covering the house in art. Also will decide, I want to go catch a fish
Yeah.
sometimes. And so her brother will help her catch a fish, which is, more his thing, but they are going to share those things. So we definitely allow individualism,
Mhm.
and we're not suppressing individualism, but we're not subsidizing individualism. We're not taking this kid here and that kid there, and so that they all have their thing. That's like just their thing. Sorry, individualism is not a in this meaning, in this vein, is not some great good that we need to cultivate.
Mhm.
It's more problematic than it is
Yeah. Well, I mean,
a positive.
we know they're individuals,
Yeah,
right?
you
We
don't have to
know,
stop it. It's like it's just
yeah.
there.
And you don't have to make it
Or sorry, you
happen.
don't. Yeah. If you don't stop it, it's there. You
It's
don't have to
there.
make it happen.
Right.
Not incur, or what am I saying here? I wrote some. Yeah, allowed but not subsidized.
Mhm.
We're not going to subsidize your. Uh,
It's been a struggle because
what's that word
sports,
when you're
um,
obsessed with yourself?
narcissism.
Narcissism. We're not gonna subsidize narcissism.
We started with girls who we had some athleticism there, but it never became the forward like thing we were aiming to work on. But with the boys, there's definitely, we're seeing a need. We're seeing a need to get some of that physical energies out. So the sports are becoming sort of a temptation, but my greatest hindrance is that if it pulls away the time that we generally spend as a family into component like, we had to go running about here and there for one person or for just a couple. So we've really aimed to do things that they could do all together. So the horseback riding works as a family. Our thing we do together for fun, like the funnest of fun, is ski, and everybody skis. It's not a like we go and a couple of us. I mean, when
And
the
we
little
DIY that some.
we do DIY
We have
that.
a
We
little
could do a whole
hill,
episode
and
about
we have an
skiing as a large
ATV,
family.
and we drag everybody up the top.
Oh, that part. Yes, that's true too.
And use skis that we've not paid very much money for,
Right.
on all the
Right.
kids, and they ski down, get that big 20-30 second run maybe,
Yeah.
and then drag them back up the top.
I guess, I mean, maybe this synthesizes an idea. It's not just about sports, but I think about the sport that they've all grown to love lately. And by all, it's 4 of the kids, because we do have some community day fragmentation at the moment, just logistically. So the 2 older girls are gone, but a family in the community occasionally hosts these seasonal soccer. I guess just a soccer season. It's not really games. They're all just practices, and all ages are
Or their
invited.
games every time.
Or their games every time, depending
And
on
the
how you look
teams
at
are
it.
different every time.
And our kids had never played soccer before this fall when they first went to this practice. And this particular dad is a homeschool dad, and he is excellent at just pointing and shooting, say, go here, this is what you do, giving clear instructions, encouragement, and
Get after it.
and just let them go
They
and
loved
do
it.
it. And so it's all 4 of the younger kids playing at the same time. So for me, especially like convenience wise, it was wonderful. But the first week, Mercy didn't go out and play because she's young and she doesn't know the kids, and they are mostly boys down there on the field. But at the end of the day, I was just so impressed. I'd kind of commended William, especially for being as young. He's at the time was 6 and 5 and 6 at the time. And I was like, buddy, you stayed on that ball. Like, you just kept going after it. Like, you didn't know what you were doing necessarily, but you just got into the game and you didn't let your newness at it hold you back from participating. Again, commending that particular homeschool dad for doing this, because he encouraged these kinds of things. And when Mercy heard that, and she'd seen it and she saw it, the boys came home
Lit a fire.
Sweating and exhausted and so happy. And she wanted to do it then. And so I've got these great videos. She doesn't ever touch the ball just about. I mean, she did a couple times, but that little thing is like a little bumblebee.
Gets in there.
Follows that ball around so fast all across the field. And she
gets in the way. I mean, like, if she's basically playing defense. Like, it's just
right.
Whatever you call that, back towards your own goal.
Yeah.
And of course, she gets in the way. I mean, that makes a difference.
It does. And then it became a thing that they can do together, even away from there. They can go kick a soccer ball around and have some plans and goals. It doesn't quite work out as well when it's just siblings. But it was just it was encouraging to me, because it took the sports thing. It was competitive. They wanted to win that particular little game that they played on the field, but they also just had so much fun learning and trying, and they were all together. And they actually, because they got to play all together, they really got to see the things each other did. You pay attention differently when you're there on the field together, I think. Mm-hmm. And so they were really noticing each other's, strengths, and I don't think we highlighted weaknesses, but really the strengths, the things that they did well, even if they were on opposing teams, they were on the field together. So It was very good experience for me for our first time doing a sport all together, but it was great. Well, the track thing, I guess we did that too, but anyway. And that was,
but that's that weird individual team sport thing. I understand.
But we did it together. So we did races together. Yeah. And that actually has been a really good thing to us.
Because it's still, there's a relational aspect to it. But being on a team, which is actual team sport, and you have to get in your place, and you could be technically great at what you do, but you could also be worthless to the team if you're not in the right place at the right time and you're only thinking about yourself. So for them to have to deal with that, I think is good and important. Okay, good job, honey. You kept it under 30 minutes, which, 40-ish minutes is the new 30. Good job.
Because I'm the only one that talked on this podcast, obviously.
Anyway, we're not going to analyze that with any numerical devices or anything. But all right. So I wanted to talk about this because Sean and Beth Doherty are going to be, well, that's not the right way to say it. I wanted to talk about this because Sean and Beth Doherty mentioned that they produce their own entertainment. By the way, I already interviewed Sean and Beth Doherty. If you know who they are, then you're excited. If you don't know who they are, you should go find out. Then you'll be excited. And next week's podcast will be them, and it's going to be awesome. So do come back next week. Like and subscribe and all that stuff.
On all the things.
All the things. Later.
Thanks. Cheers.
Oh, you said it. This episode of the Stay at Work Home is brought to you by HeartlandBunkies.com. Come check out our full line of small cabin kits that can be easily assembled by a few friends or family in just a weekend. Extra space for meaningful connection, or extra income, or a home office, a homeschool room, or whatever.